Okay, thank you, Philip, for joining me again to continue this Vagabond discussion. Today we will be talking about the third Viz Big, yep, you have it physically, which are volumes 7 through 9.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, this is our third video. If you missed the last video that was on Philip's channel, that'll be linked. I'll also have a playlist that we'll just keep adding to as we go on. That'll be linked in the description as well. But Philip, what did you think of these last 3 volumes that we just read?
I think, Murphy, this is my favorite bind up so far.
Is it? That's great.
Yeah.
I think so too, actually.
Yeah? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I think so.
I'll be interested to hear why in your case. But for me, it's definitely my favorite so far because I like the incorporation of the spiritual elements into a lot of the action. And it's really, I mean, the first, like volume 7 is this long standoff, but I was like, yeah, there's so much tension and there's just, it's really well done. Plus, I think there are these visuals in there that really feed into the whole spiritual dimension of it, like looking at the stars in the middle of this standoff. So I like that. I'm here for it. I really enjoyed that element and that introduction of some new dynamics, some new characters later, especially in actually 9, because it's really 7 where we get the standoff, and 8 is where the standoff ends. But then we get this sort of flashback. We get this introduction to Inshun's youth and how he became what he is. And I actually enjoyed that. I appreciated that.
I did too. I think that was essential for building his character into more than just the antagonist to Musashi.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I like that. I appreciated that development, but also what's happening with Musashi and it seems like some pretty interesting encounters are about to happen because everything seems to be coming together at the Yagyu school. And forgive me, my pronunciations they're going to be terrible as usual, but I'll do my best. But everything seems to be coming to a real kind of pressure point here at the Yagyu school, where even Denshichiro, Denshichiro from the Yoshioka school is there. So you've got all these elements that are coming together.
Yep, it's really starting to weave together.
Yeah,
Otsu and everything leading or building up to their meeting again. And then Matahachi realizing that Otsu and Musashi ran off together.
Not quite.
We'll discuss that. There's a lot to discuss around Matahachi. I think he's still my favorite, honestly.
Really? Okay.
I think so. He's just interesting. He's a mess. He's a big old mess.
He is.
But yeah, I think the reason I enjoyed this one so much is because this manga series proved itself or showed itself to be far more philosophical right from the start. From the very beginning, it made clear what it was about. And up to this point, I feel like I've been reading these deeper conversations looking for the philosophy, like wanting to know, what are we discussing here? Yeah. And obviously, manhood and finding yourself and all that has been clear from the start, but we're adding a lot of layers to that in this volume. And while I still don't know if I know what the author wants to talk to me about yet, I feel like I'm a little bit closer, and there's a lot of good stuff to discuss within these volumes, you and I. So I'm really excited to dig into it.
Yeah, same here. Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. So we start off with Inshun and Musashi continuing that fight. I'm really curious if you, well, actually, let's start with the flashback, because that was pretty early on, wasn't it, with his dad, which it has been a theme in these volumes of your past kind of haunting you, shaping you. It's what you try to escape or form yourself from. We got that with both Inshun and Musashi. But I'm curious, how did you feel about this flashback with Musashi getting a little bit more of an image of his dad and his life?
Yeah, I think it was really well done. There's, we get him initially in the forest preparing for this fight. He's carving these little, what are they, little Buddhas or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he has that encounter with the wolf. You get this sense of him being this very connected to nature. He's this
Mm,
wild mountain guy and all of that. And but that's part of his strength, really, I think, is what we're starting to see.
mm,
Is that he has a natural understanding of the world that is a product of him being in tune with nature more than
mhm.
most folks. So that's a part of his strength that he doesn't understand entirely himself, I think.
Yeah.
And then we get that lead up to that really brilliant that scene where he sees his father there, and there he's this tiny figure, and he's
Yeah.
this vast looming ghost, and you realize all this time trying to prove how strong and invincible he is, it's all about defending himself from this menacing abusive patriarch here. I think it's just that was touching, actually. I thought, oh, this poor guy, this poor kid. And you have him being these panels where he's a kid next to him being the current like 20-year-old or so
Mhm.
he is, and you see that vulnerable kid now in the 20-year-old. So yeah, like on this page they're right next to each other. That's him as a kid and him as in the present. So
Mhm.
I really thought it was brilliant. But what did you think of it?
Oh no, I agree with you. I completely agree. I think that there seems to be a big emphasis on what makes you. So there's an emphasis on brute strength and on trying to like muscle your way into the greatest fighters, and then the older generation within the manga kind of saying, "Yeah, I tried that route and it didn't work," and showing that they're so much stronger than these these upstarts. But it's not because of strength, it's because of some sort of knowledge that they've unlocked.
Yeah.
And that connectivity to the earth and to life and the heavens and, all these things, spiritual connection as well as connection to what's around you seems to be the key into unlocking that greater strength.
Yes.
So it is really interesting to see that Musashi seemed to have that as a child,
Yeah.
only to go so far in the other direction, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like he has this block now, and it does have so much
Yeah.
to do with his father, and the father saying, "You're weak. You're gonna die soon." It's this fascinating interplay. You remember how Canute in Vinland Saga had his father's head always there talking to him. It's
Mhm.
a similar dynamic, I think.
Yeah, well, and, uh, Thorfinn also was haunted by, and so was Hild, lots of that. I
Yeah.
wonder if these are maybe manga staples that you and I are just discovering for the first time, but maybe this is just a great way to visually show something following you in your life.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that's in Berserk too, in the
Is it?
one volume of Berserk that I read. Yeah, it is. So
Okay.
yeah, this might just be a manga staple, which makes sense because it is a very visual way of showing that the past follows you.
And it's a very human thing as well. It's a very archetypal, I think, thing to explore one's relationship with one's parents and what trauma is handed down,
Hmm.
sometimes quite deliberately and sometimes inadvertently from previous generations. And a lot of that is wrapped up in the ideals of masculinity, and so that's it's really well done here. It's all woven together, I think, pretty powerfully.
Hmm. No, I do agree.
Another interesting moment too, while you're looking, I thought was while he's preparing, guess who he sees?
Yeah. Oh, his love for Otsu is so sweet.
Yeah, yeah,
He I'm really excited to see their storylines collide and see what that looks like, especially since, spoiler for later in the video discussions, she seems to be kind of interested
yeah.
in Hyoganosuke. Was that how you said his name?
Yonosuke, I think something like that. That's the grandson of the master of the Yagyu school you're
Yeah,
talking.
Hyoganosuke.
Yeah,
Hyoganosuke. I couldn't remember, but I've just found it in my notes. Hyoganosuke. Yeah, she seems interested in him
like he reminds her of Takezo slash Musashi, but without the baggage.
without the baggage, without the monster side
Yeah,
of him,
yeah,
which Musashi is beginning to work through, but he
yeah.
definitely still has it,
Yeah.
which we'll get into. But yeah, it was interesting to see in the last discussion we had where we saw Musashi really being shaken by Inshun and realizing, okay, this is it. This is the battle to the death, right? And shaking and not using all of his strength and just getting in his head. And then in this volume, it reverses where you have Inshun getting in his head and being afraid and realizing this is it. This is the fight to death that I've been seeking. I think there was a line in there where he said that he was looking for a fight to the death so that he could reach his peak at the moment of that, which is really interesting. But he also has that very like brutal kind of view towards battles. But it was interesting to see that switch in Musashi getting more grounded and breathing and being able to see. He can see him now and gaining that upper hand in a mental status. The way the battle changed was in the mind instead of in a physical overpowering, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Inshun's limitation is in many ways a product of the trauma that he suffered as a boy, which we get into more in the 8th volume, but he has a mental block of a sort because of what he has repressed, because of the death of the tragic death of his mother and his father in that incident. And that is, I think, a big explanation for who he's become, how dead he seems to be to other people, how he doesn't have friends, that he feels alone. And that isolation is something that ultimately becomes a kind of mental block for him, and all that stuff that he's repressed.
Yeah.
So I think he's trying to feel alive.
Yeah.
That's part of why he wants to fight somebody like Musashi. He's like, oh, this is, now I can feel alive after all the years of repressing and deadening myself.
Yeah. I think it's something of proving himself too. Like he's supposed to be his mother's protector and he couldn't be.
Exactly.
So becoming the best, becoming the strongest is almost like becoming who he wasn't able to be in that moment for his family.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So
it's really tragic. It's so sad. And even the Hozon, the older, the one who's in charge of the dojo,
of the spear one.
Yeah. Is it Hozion?
Well, so is it, you're talking about the grandfather?
The grandfather.
Ine, I think is his.
Ine, okay. Yeah. He even mentions, essentially, I can't get through to him. You know, like I've tried to teach him. He picked up the spear as a little boy and was determined to do this. But Musashi, I can teach. He is going to be able to get this lesson. Which is really sad. And you kind of see that also from Agon, who mentions that, that they're afraid of him, that they don't, it's not that they don't respect him, they don't want him as their leader because he's so isolated and he's so removed. And that, again, comes from that past. It comes from kind of this single-minded determination, much like Musashi has, to become the best, to prove himself, to outrun his past. So it's really interesting, this conflict that I think wasn't very interesting at the setup. I mean, it was fun, it was exciting, but it's not an interesting reason to fight. Turned into two traumatized kids doing the same thing, trying to meet the same goal, and ending up having a standoff. And it's more about the mind and about overcoming and who you become more than it is about brute strength, which I thought was really, that's so, I love that.
Yeah, same here. What did you think of the fact that Ine, the older, the mentor figure, renames, Inshun is not his original name. He had, I can't remember what it was, but he had another name as a boy.
Yeah. And I don't think I wrote it down.
He rebrands him. He's starting all over, and he doesn't even remember that life because he's repressed that much. But Inshun is trying, or Ine is trying to give him a new life after that trauma. But you can't really totally disconnect from it, can you? It's there in your subconscious. It's part of who he is, and how he interacts is very much a product of that.
Yeah, I know that there's, I mean, I psychology interests me, but I'm not formally trained in it. But I know that there's a thing that people sometimes do when they've incurred significant trauma in their life, especially in their childhood, where sometimes they'll take on their middle name or they'll change their name to just kind of like separate themselves from that trauma. So I
Yeah.
do wonder if there was something in that where he was just like, okay, come here, let's start over. Shave your head, change your name, start a new life. And I do know that when a child experiences extreme trauma, there is a trauma response that a lot of kids experience where the brain just kind of shuts off that piece and kind of represses it. So I
Right.
feel like that's what happened to him. But of course, that will affect, there's a ripple effect to that of him suppressing those memories, and that was him being locked into that trauma in a
Yeah.
secondary way, having that like isolation and distance and dog-mindedness to prove himself in battle.
Yeah. So Ine's plan to train Musashi, because he sees he could be the key to unlocking Inshun's and I guess reintegrating him, giving him a chance at wholeness, because he wasn't able to do that for Inshun himself. But he sees that,
Mm,
okay, this Musashi character, I think this could lead to, and
yeah.
even though Musashi almost kills him in that fit of wild rage, where he definitely loses touch with that spiritual side that he'd been tapping in.
Inshun, he almost kills Inshun.
Yeah, because
I thought he did. I
yeah,
thought his spirit was outside of his body. I think he did kill him. I think he killed him, and then Inshun kind of willed himself back into life with his I want to live stuff, which I don't know. Have you studied Buddhism at all? Is that a
some.
Buddhist?
I'm no expert, but I'm very interested in Buddhism and
Okay.
yeah,
The series is very grounded in Buddhism, so I
yeah.
wonder if that's a Buddhist philosophy of like choosing the time of death or
Hmm.
being able to will your spirit to hang on or something like that, you know?
Yeah, I think that would entail a certain degree of enlightenment, that you would have to have some real
Sure.
self-control. So not just anyone could do such a thing.
Sure. He did seem to gain some enlightenment in his death.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, he comes back a different person again. It's like he's reborn again. And
Mhm.
this Inshun is much more integrated than the previous one. Like he seems,
Mhm.
because what does he see? What's the vision that he sees? And you're not sure, is this Ine's memory that we're looking at? Is it
I
Inshun?
thought it was.
It seemed like it, but it also seemed to weirdly sort of blend into the vision of this
Yeah.
ghost version of Inshun.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, it's worked in beautifully as a flashback, and we get the trauma. We get to see as the readers, okay, this is what happened to this poor kid, and reliving that somehow allows him to become whole again. Like he's confronted this thing that he had been
Mhm.
repressing, and now he sort of understands himself in a way he hadn't previously, and he seems
Mm.
enlightened as a result of that.
Mm. That's a good observation. I didn't connect that it was in seeing his past again and not repressing it anymore. That was what kind of gave him the chance to be free of what was holding on to him.
Yeah.
But I think you're right in that. I think that was an essential piece of him actually getting that enlightenment and realizing that he wanted to live
Yes.
instead of what he was previously doing, which wasn't truly living.
Yeah, you're so right, and that's what he keeps saying at the end is, I want to live.
Mhm.
I want to
Mhm.
live.
Mhm.
And you get the feeling that he didn't really feel like he wasn't really living prior to that.
Exactly. And he does change coming out of that when he comes out of when he goes back into his body and then comes out of his stupor when Musashi wakes up next to him and he's still asleep.
Yeah.
And he goes to work in the field with his grandfather.
Yeah.
You know, there's a demeanor change. His whole face is different. I mean, it's the same, but it's different now, which is amazing that was captured in these drawings. But
Yeah.
you know, it was like he was brighter. It was like a weight was lifted off of him.
Yes.
Um, and the stuff that he actually said to Inshun, where let's see if I can find it. But he told him like, you're not a monster, you're not alone. That was
Right.
another thing. He was feeling so alone. You're not alone. He was able to give him the secrets, the key to becoming a better fighter. He surrendered his spear. You know, like oh, and then whenever he saw Musashi on the road
Yeah.
and Musashi was ready to fight and he just bowed his head. Oh, it was so beautiful.
And he says, next time we meet, I hope that something like we can meet as friends and something to that.
Yeah.
And Musashi's kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah. They really both came away from this battle having not fought. I mean, they did fight. Insun got brutalized, but having the fight not being the ending, but them both walking away, having grown a lot as men.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the key here. And that's what elevates this for me into great storytelling, not just a lot of action, which, I love the action too. I'm not opposed to it.
It's fun.
Right. But this is really cool. And we also get significantly these flashbacks from both the Yagyu master and the Hojoin master, who apparently both trained under this like super granddaddy spiritual master swordsman dude named, and I don't know if this is anywhere near the right pronunciation, but I had to write this down. Kami Izumi Ise no Kami Hidetsuna.
Good for you.
I'm going to call him Hidetsuna from now on.
Good, great.
But what did you think of that? Because we get this whole like tradition going back. And these guys are remembering their own training when they were young and sort of hot-headed. And they met this one great master. And we get these. I love how they weave these flashbacks, because you have the Yagyu master who is with Otsu. And he is so you're not ever sure whose flashbacks are these, because they're both doing this. But you also have Ine, the Hojoin master, seeing this simultaneously. And they're together and they're training with this sort of granddaddy Hidetsuna guy. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, and they both came away as men who, like for instance, the Otsu's master, when he was challenged, and he just kind of like threw his spear to the side and he's like, all right, I'll fight you with my bare hands. And he was able to do so. And it kind of shows that there is this philosophy, there's this enlightenment that they have that means that they're more connected to themselves, to their opponents, that they use a different kind of tactic to be able to disengage in the fight, which I'm really excited to learn. It seems to be a lot of being connected with the earth and being connected with humanity. But I'm excited to explore it more. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I agree. And it's where you get all these wonderful panels of this, quite a few actually, of the stars. And then there's the landscape there. And so I think that what that is suggesting is this state of connection, this state of enlightenment, and this is where you get, I think Musashi is beginning to get, and it's because of his sort of connection with nature, that he seems more open. These flashes of insight come to him. But the idea that is very Buddhist is that not only are we all ephemeral, that we're fleeting beings, but also that we are connected to everything, that we're part of everything. And I read in this one wonderful book by a Buddhist scholar named Thich Nhat Hanh, called The Heart of the Buddhist Teaching. He compared us to a wave on the surface of the ocean. And the little wave, as an individual wave, thinks it's a happy little individual wave, but really it's just part of the water, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what we are. We're little waves at the moment, but we always have been part of the water. That is the insight that perhaps Musashi is groping towards, is that this sense of connection to everything. And I think that's conveyed really spiritually and beautifully. These landscape images and the stars and everything else. It's really quite gorgeous.
I agree. And there was an emphasis from both of the older masters about being connected to heaven and earth, and that kind of being the key. So I guess that's the physical and the spiritual side of things. I am curious. There's a couple of things that I did not understand. So I'm curious if you have some sort of insight. For instance, the standoff where they physically couldn't move. They were actually just paralyzed, like stuck in that spot. As well as Musashi saying, I can see now, I can see. And that was what made him be able to break through that. Why? What caused them to, why? What is it?
So my interpretation of that is
Uh-huh.
that Musashi arrived in this state that I was just trying to describe a moment
Mm-hmm.
ago, where he feels his connection to the world. He has this
Mm-hmm.
insight. It's as if he's transcended his own body, his
Mm-hmm.
individual self, and he's gained this kind of glimpse into an enlightened state, I guess you could say, where he sees behind the surface. He sees everything connected, but that allows him to see Inshun's the fear that is at the heart of Inshun. That was the trauma when he was a little boy. So he sees behind all that, and he knows that Inshun is vulnerable. He doesn't have to be afraid of this guy because he's
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable, he's frail. So I think it allows him a kind of vision that he didn't previously have. I think he loses hold of that enlightened state when he begins to beat him to death. And
Yeah.
he says, "Oh, I'm strong now. I won," right? And that
Turns
he
back into the beast.
back to the beast at that moment.
Yeah.
But he had that glimpse, and I think that's what allows him to see through Inshun, as he puts it, in that moment, at least, because he arrives in that state of
Mm-hmm.
connection, which is conveyed with another one of those beautiful panels. And he even sleeps. He oversleeps, because
Right.
when you're in that kind of state, when you experience that transcendent
Mm.
state of connection, it's timeless. You don't
Mm-hmm.
feel time. You've grown bigger than time. You feel the
Mm.
whole world is part of you, and you're part of the whole world. And I think that's why he oversleeps, because he's in this like Zen kind of enlightened state,
Mm-hmm.
and he shows up like that. And so I think that's where he gets that insight. That's my
Yeah.
best guess.
No, that totally makes sense. I like that. I like that uh, theory, observation.
Yeah.
I'm curious too. Do you reckon that when old man, uh, when he gets sick after the battle, do you think that it's because spiritually, or that kind of metaphysical, that he was so connected to the fight too that it just kind of zapped him, drained him like it did the two boys?
I think that's part of it. I also think that a big part of what's keeping him alive is the desire to have an heir to his school who
Mm-hmm.
is enlightened. And he's
Mm-hmm.
been waiting for Inshun to get this. And this encounter with Musashi has delivered. And he knows
Mm-hmm.
it. And then he's able to just sort of like let go.
Mm-hmm.
He's able to let go in that moment. And I think that's part of it too. Like he said, okay, it's okay if I pass away now because Inshun has finally got it. And,
Yeah.
I think that might be part of it too.
So do you think that he felt that in spiritually and got that enlightenment and brought him back, and then that was what made him able to release and say, okay, the future is safe for him?
I think so. I think that's how I'm
That
reading.
makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense, because there's already been several instances of someone being able to say, oh yeah, I see that spiritual person behind you, being able to recognize when someone is around them in the spirit. So with someone as enlightened as him, I can see him being able to recognize what was happening to Inshun internally.
Yeah, it's a passing of the torch. It's also something I think that happens between now. I don't think he's literally his father or grandfather, because he sort of adopted Inshun after Inshun's parents were killed, but he's a father figure to him.
He
And
did try to give his dad pickles though on his way out. So
yeah,
I feel like there was definitely a connection.
maybe. Yeah. Yeah. But regardless, I think he sees Inshun as a son of a sort. And I think there's a moment in every parent-child relationship when you recognize your child has grown up,
Mm-hmm.
and you no longer have to be the protector. You
Mm,
no longer have to be the mentor. You can just sit back and relax, and you're okay. That you know that the kid is going to be okay when you're gone. And
yeah.
I think that's kind of what's going on there.
Yeah. I think that's lovely.
What did you, just a quick aside, I was interested in your thoughts on, how sometimes he gets like these thicker brush strokes.
Mm,
And these are very special panels when you hear
mm-hmm.
these thicker brush strokes, and it's like a moment of, oh,
Mm,
okay, of insight or
mm-hmm.
of epiphany, revelation or something. I like that. I love the art in here, and I think it's cool how, in a way, chose to distinguish these fairly rare panels with this different style, this thicker
Yeah.
style. Yeah.
I agree. I think he does it. He shows what's being said externally and internally by either wrapping a bubble around it or like leaving it set kind of in the background. And then in this instance, I think it indicates a deeper thought, like even going deeper into there's something intense happening internally. And I think that showcases it really well.
Yeah, like here too. There's the old fella. Whoops.
Right. Yeah, he goes really heavy for a bit there in this.
Yeah. But there's some like understanding, there's some insight going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it serves its purpose. It's very it draws you in a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff. Okay, so now I guess we're ready for volume 9.
Yeah, so Musashi is off on a new quest, fight some new people, get stronger some more.
Yeah.
He's learned a little, but he's still got his mission.
And I think the statement right from the beginning with this page, with the juxtaposition of these two, it tells a lot, doesn't it? And you can see you've got him kind of smirky and ridiculous, and Matahachi really doesn't seem to have learned the spiritual lessons that he.
Oh, he's not going to learn for a long time.
Yeah.
Matahachi is a fixer-upper.
Yeah, and then of course Musashi's really making progress, and you can see in his bearing, you can see there's that he's starting to come into his own here.
He's getting there, one step closer.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, at the end of was it at the end of the last volume or beginning of this one? When he decides to set on his quest and he turns to the boy and he's like, "All right, you lead the way." And I thought, that was another really good indicator of the progress made. He's like he's taking someone on under his wing now and feeling qualified. Yeah. Kotaro, is that his name? I couldn't remember his name.
The little boy, who initially rejected him as his master because he ran away, but then he saw, oh well, actually, I'll stick with you. Yeah, that's
another thing too. Like Musashi doesn't even address that he yelled at him, cried, was like, "I'm done with you. You're shameful." And Musashi is just like, "Let's go, boy," instead of holding that grudge, which I think also says a lot about him.
Oh, I think so too. And I think that he sees himself in Jotaro a lot. So, and this kid, orphaned, kind of wild, trying to prove himself to the world, So,
yeah, and he got a lot of attention in this one as well. He got to meet Otsu, became her little brother.
Yeah, which is it's one of those situations where, oh, come on, there's Musashi and Otsu are this close to encountering each other, but there's some cosmic irony at work here, so they don't actually quite see each other, but they just almost sort of brush by each other here.
Yeah, multiple times they're one person removed, with the servant girl and the flower, and with Jotaro, and Jotaro seems to know who she is. Like when she said her name and he was like, "Oh, Otsu."
There is that moment, yeah.
Which they were teasing Musashi earlier about crying out Otsu in his sleep. So it's certainly possible that he remembers and he's like, "Wait, is that the one?" It could be a different Otsu, but is that the one? Well, did he meet her when she asked him if she could go with him? Remember when she said, "Takezo, I'm going with you," and he was like, "No, I don't need the distraction. Go away." Do you remember that?
Was Jotaro there then?
Yeah, was Jotaro there? Did he witness that? Has he met Otsu?
No, I don't think so. I think I think that's later. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so he isn't sure that this is her.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right though, because there is a moment where he seems to be, okay. Run to Musashi and say, "Hey, I think."
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Which, I mean, to be fair, if I was one person removed and I was like, "Oh, Sam, cool. This must be the Sam. Hey, your lover," I wouldn't make that leap in judgment either.
Yeah, how common a name is Otsu? Yeah,
right. How common is that name? I don't know. But I imagine it has to come up eventually.
Well, I think you're onto something. I think Jotaro is probably going to play a key role in the two of them finally understanding that they're in each other's presence. So we'll see. Yeah.
And we do get a little bit more from Otsu as well. Her bond her bond with the master, her crying because he's so proud of his grandson, and she just doesn't have that family.
Yeah.
Which once again, she is being taken into this family. I mean, he does actually say, "You can live here forever," and he takes her into his arms, and
Yeah.
that was a really sweet moment. But I am curious to see what family is going to end up looking like for her. She rejected Matahachi's family after Matahachi ran off with Okiko. What was her name?
Oko.
Oko, thanks. And now she has this potential found family, but I don't think she's going to stay here either. I think Takezo or Musashi is going to be, the found family. And I hope Matahachi will as well, in a way, in his own way, eventually.
I'm very concerned for Matahachi. He keeps running away, metaphorically and literally. When he's challenged by a real samurai, he's like, oops, and then he pretends to tie his shoe or whatever, his sandal, and then pushes them down the hill, and he's like running away.
Yeah, and he lies to his mom.
He lies to his mom.
Whenever she sees him, and she's distraught because she thought her son was dead. She thought that he was manipulated into going to war, and instead he just ran off with a lady and has been getting stuck in alcohol and ladies, and he's just like, oh no, I'm a great samurai. This is my alias. It's okay. Yeah, right. Instead of, and it's so funny that he's leaned so far into this that he's just continuing on this cycle that is gonna get him in trouble. I mean, it's not gonna be good.
But there's a part of him too that, although he has his childhood attachment to Musashi, he's more and more, I think, seeing him as a rival. There's some more jealousy creeping into his attitude toward Musashi, which really gets fed when his mother lies to him and said, there's a lot of family lies there.
Lots of family lies, yep.
Yeah. But he gets really jealous when he thinks, oh, Otsu's run off with Musashi now.
Okay, with Takezo. Yeah, which he has no right. He has no right to be upset at Takezo for running off with Otsu when he left Otsu for another woman. And now he's with another woman now, which, I mean, like, be with who you want to be. You can't be mad at your ex for moving on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, we barely know the name of the woman he's been, and of course he ran away. So I assuming he's not going to see her again either.
Kiku.
Okay. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, he's obviously getting worse before he's getting better. I do hope he's going to have some event that's going to force him to confront himself.
He will. I think so. There's too much. We would have lost him by now if he wasn't going to have some sort of arc of his own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I hope so. I think so. I think he's going to eventually learn to grow up. He'll probably always be the less mature, but I think he's going to have to learn. And I hope that it's going to be Takezo or Musashi and Otsu, and then Matahachi. I get their names mixed up sometimes. And then Matahachi, being the companion, being the friend to them both. Yeah. But we'll have to see. But Musashi also does meet Hyoganosuke before they actually have like the true confrontation in the bath, right? Which at first I was like, they look this two men that look exactly the same. I don't know what I'm reading. I was very
big, buff dudes with a lot of wariness about them.
Both have long hair. Both put their hair in a ponytail sometimes. Yeah. The only distinction was that Jotaro was attached scar. Is there a scar? Oh, the forehead scar.
The forehead, and he has a big one on his chest too.
I really should have looked for scars.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. Yeah.
That would have been a lot smarter. There was definitely a moment before Jotaro went in the bath and sat next to Musashi, and I was like, oh, okay, that one's Musashi. But there was a moment there where I was like, who is this? I don't even know which one's which. Yeah. But I think there's a point in making Hyoganosuke look so much like Musashi. Yeah. Because there's going to be that strong parallel, just like there was with Inshun, but probably even more so. Yeah. Adding Otsu into the mix as well. It'll be interesting. But they have officially met just
Yeah.
not realizing what that
They
what
don't
that
know
is.
each other's names, but I love how there's this instant respect between them and a sort of sense of commonality. Like,
Understanding each other.
yeah, like Hyogonosuke sees that this guy's a lot like me, and I love how he asks him, and he sees, okay, this guy's wary. You don't like baths for the same reason I don't like baths,
Yep.
because you got to let your guard down. And for
Mm-hmm.
people like us, that's a no-no. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think they see each other's strength, but they also see each other's vulnerability in that moment. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like almost an instant bond from that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I'm excited to see where that goes. I also find it really interesting that the thing, so we know where it's determined with Din Shichiro.
Yes.
It's determined with Din Shichiro that we don't take people in. You know, if they come, they
Yeah.
formally ask no. And the fact that Musashi used his chance to request entry to learn about the flower, to learn about who cut this so perfectly, that was what gave him an in,
Very
or
cool.
or at least one step closer to being in. Yeah, I thought that was really neat. It was his fascination with technique and with that perfection and with what made them stand out, as opposed to just a request.
Also, I think significantly, it was a cut that he recognized that didn't maim or
Exactly.
or disfigure or didn't take
Mhm.
the life away. I mean, it did. It
Mhm.
cut the flower, but
Sure,
somehow that
it
cut
preserved that life.
was less damaging than other ordinary people's cuts. And so he recognized
Yeah,
this master here who did this. And that's just a brilliant touch. I thought
I
that
love
was
it. Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah.
I love that too. But then he kind of like reverts back where he's
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna egg this guy on and make him want to fight me.
Yeah. And they see through it. They really do, except for the one guy
Except
who's,
for the one guy.
yeah.
But
But
all
yeah,
you need is one.
that's right. But it didn't work out because they kind of removed him from the scene.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think he's going to get his chance because of what's happening with Jotaro and the dog, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, which I find interesting because there was an emphasis on Musashi. Wow, I'm sorry. I always question myself. I'm like, is it Masahachi or is it Musashi?
right, I
With
know.
Musashi, there was an emphasis on him with the wolf and his connection with nature and
Yes.
animals. You
Yeah.
got that too?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's his wanting to fight with the animal instead of wanting to commune with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Jotaro has, as a little boy, is a little boy's version of this masculine ideal. Oh, I have to get my revenge because you scratched my face. And I was actually pretty disturbed by him killing this dog.
Yeah, I think we were supposed to be.
Yeah. And they're very upset at the dojo as well. And there's the one guy who presumably that's his dog, and he's going to kill Jotaro
Mm-hmm.
because of what he
Oh
did to
yeah,
the dog.
yeah. He's ready to take him on, and Jotaro is ready to kill him back. He's like, "Go
Yeah.
ahead, fight me. I'ma kill you." And it's like it's Musashi from Volume 1 amplified in a child.
Yeah, exactly. And interestingly, Musashi's watching this, and now we're going to see, okay, how's he going to react to this?
Mm-hmm. I reckon he'll step in and pull the kid away.
I would assume, but is it going to be slightly more enlightened Musashi who steps in, or is it going to be Beast Musashi?
Right. Good point, because I assumed it would be enlightened, but you're right. He kind of goes back and forth between the two. He isn't solidified as the more enlightened version of himself yet. So it really could be either one.
Yeah, and he is looking for a chance to prove himself, but that might not be the best way to go about it.
No, definitely not, because it's not a matter of challenging strength. It's a matter of this man feeling like he's been deeply wronged, and then Musashi stepping in and saying, "I'll take this fight instead." I don't think that's going to get him the in that he wants.
Yeah, which inevitably I feel like is going to bring Musashi and Hyogonosuke into some kind of conflict, because that's just got to happen, right? I mean, these two are so similar. I think this is ultimately where it's heading, is these two are going to be forced to fight each other, or that they're
that's what he wants. That's what Musashi wants.
Ultimately, that's what he wants
to fight Hyogonosuke. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to it, because Up to this point, at least, especially recently, it's been proven that these fights are a lot more than a fight. It's a lot more than a level up or like power. You know, fight this enemy that's strong, get stronger. Fight this new enemy that's strong, get stronger, which is an interesting storyline to me. And it's obviously a lot more than that. So I'm excited to see what connections and parallels we have, what we can pull into and dissect. It's going to be fun.
Oh, I agree. I agree. I really like where this is heading.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure Otsu is going to become a bigger and bigger role as well.
I hope so. I really do hope so. I want to see her, more of her. I'm expecting to see Akemi come back into the story as well. She didn't appear in any of these 3 volumes at all.
That's true.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm assuming she'll be brought back into the story somehow or other. But I would like to see more of Otsu. If I had one little tiny complaint, I would say, could we have more of Otsu? Because yes, we do get some insight into her, and she has her moment there when she's got this beautiful connection with the master of the Yagyu school. I don't like that. I like where that's going, but I'd like to see even more from her, perhaps.
I agree. I think we will. I'm looking forward to seeing her character fleshed out a little bit more. Because right now she is the one who Musashi loves, the one who Matahachi is jealous over, and the one who is orphaned. And those are kind of her 3 characteristics, and 2 of which aren't actually characteristics. So it'll be good to get her fleshed out a little bit more. It looks like we're probably going to have all the perspectives collide before we get that fleshing out, but hopefully we'll get it.
Yeah, awesome. So lots to look forward to here, I think.
Yes, I agree. It's going to be fun. I'm really excited for the next Bind Up.
Yeah, same here.
Cool. All right. Well, is there anything you want to discuss before we sign it off?
I think we covered it all pretty well. I think we touched on all the major elements. I'm sure, you know, an hour from now I'll think, oh, why didn't I mention that? But that's always how it is.
Yeah. I think it was good.
Yeah, I just want to thank you again, Murphy, for you know, discussing this with me. I always walk away from reading the book thinking lots of thoughts, and then I sit down with you and we talk about it, and I get even more excited and more
Me too.
enthused for the story.
This is a perfect series for us to sit down and really break down and dig into.
Yeah, lots of learning for me. So this is perfect. Yeah,
agreed. Thank you so much for coming on. I think that you're the perfect person to be discussing this with, and I'm having a ton of fun discovering the series for the first time with you. So we will have our next discussion on Philip's channel. That will be released next week on Tuesday. So again, his channel is linked in the description. Make sure you're subscribed if you're enjoying these conversations and you want to keep having them with us. I'm really excited. I feel like we're at the point where the manga is like becoming what it's supposed to become. You know what I mean?
Yes, totally with you.
Yeah. I'm excited. I told you that Matahachi was my favorite character. Do you have a favorite character?
Ooh, well, I think Takuan would be my answer from the first. He's the monk. Yes. Takuan probably. I wouldn't mind more Takuan. He didn't really have much presence in this bind up at all. I'm expecting to see him again, but you know, we'll see. But I think I love his playfulness, and I love the way he has brought Musashi back to life, back to. I mean, I think if it weren't for his influence, Musashi would never be connecting with another person.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And would never even entertain the idea of letting Otsu back into his life at this point that we're about to experience.
Yeah. So more Takuan, please.
I'm down for that. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you again for joining me, Philip. Thanks for having this chat with me, and I will see you next week.